Most people believe intelligence is something you are born with, a fixed number on a test sheet that dictates your potential. But Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, argued that true intelligence, or what he often referred to as consciousness, is not a static trait. It is a constant, agonizing struggle against the darkness of unconsciousness. He famously said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This means that what we often dismiss as stupidity or low IQ is actually something far more dangerous: a voluntary surrender to unconscious habits. It is a refusal to think. When you observe the daily patterns of modern life, you start to see exactly what Jung warned us about. We are not just seeing a decline in cognitive ability, we are witnessing a mass regression of the psyche. There are specific, observable habits that signal a person has stopped engaging with their own consciousness, effectively lowering their functional intelligence day by day. These aren't just bad habits, they are symptoms of a mind that has chosen the path of least resistance. If you are brave enough to look into the mirror that Jung provides, you might recognize these patterns in yourself, and that recognition is the only way out. The first and perhaps most pervasive habit is the passive, uncritical consumption of the mass mind. Jung observed that the greatest danger to the individual is not nature, but the psychic epidemic of the crowd. Today, this manifests as the endless, hypnotic scroll through social media and entertainment. When you spend hours consuming short-form content without a single moment of pause or reflection, you are not just relaxing, you are dissolving your individuality into the collective unconscious. Jung warned that when the individual mind merges with the mass mind, the result is always a lowering of mental level. Think about it. When you watch video after video, letting the algorithm dictate your thoughts, you are silencing your own inner voice. You are replacing active judgment with passive reception. Neuroscientifically, this weakens the prefrontal cortex, the seat of logic and personality. But psychologically, it is even worse. You are becoming what Jung called a man of the mass, possessed by the opinions, fears, and desires of others. A person with high intelligence guards their mind. They do not let just anything enter. They consume content. Yes, but they engage with it. They wrestle with it. They integrate it. If your daily default is to open a screen and turn off your brain, you are training yourself to be less than you are. You are practicing unconsciousness. This leads directly into the second habit, which Jung would identify as a failure to confront the shadow emotional reactivity. We all know people who explode the moment their beliefs are challenged. A simple disagreement feels like a life-or-death attack. In the comments sections of the internet, this is the default mode of communication. Insults, rage, immediate dismissal. Jung taught us that everything that irritates us about others can lead to an understanding of ourselves. When you react instantly with anger, you are projecting your own shadow, the repressed, insecure parts of your psyche, onto the other person. This lack of a pause between stimulus and response is a hallmark of low cognitive function. It signifies that the primitive emotional brain has hijacked the higher, rational mind. A truly intelligent person possesses the capacity for what psychologists call cognitive decoupling, the ability to observe an idea, even an offensive one, without identifying with it or reacting to it immediately. They can look at a contrary opinion and say, "That is interesting," rather than, "That is a threat." If you find yourself unable to control your immediate emotional outbursts, if you cannot hear a dissenting voice without feeling a spike of adrenaline, you are not thinking. You are being possessed by your complexes. You are operating as an automaton, driven by unseen forces within your own psyche, mistaking your emotional reflexes for intellectual convictions. This brings us to a third, subtle habit that is a silent killer of intelligence: the avoidance of mental friction. Jung believed that the purpose of life was individuation, the difficult, painful process of becoming a truly distinct individual. This process requires constant effort. It requires facing the unknown. However, a sign of lower cognitive standing is the desperate clinging to the familiar. This is the person who refuses to learn new tools, who reads only what confirms what they already know, and who structures their life to avoid any form of cognitive load. The brain, like a muscle, operates on a use-it-or-lose-it principle, but the psyche operates on a principle of stagnation versus growth. When you avoid difficult conversations, complex books, or new skills because they are too hard or too boring, you are actually expressing a fear of growth. Jung called this regression, a retreat back to the safety of the maternal unconscious, the state of being a child where everything is provided and nothing is challenged. Intelligence is not just about solving puzzles. It is about the willingness to tolerate ambiguity and confusion while you figure things out. If your daily habit is to seek comfort and simplicity at all costs, you are actively dulling your sharpest tool. You are choosing the warm, fuzzy blanket of ignorance over the cold, hard path of consciousness. And over time, this choice compounds. The less you use your mind, the less mind you have to use. This brings us to the fourth habit, which is perhaps the most deceptive because it often masquerades as strength, cognitive rigidity, or the inability to change one's mind in the face of new evidence. We often praise people for sticking to their guns, but Jung saw this differently. He understood that a healthy psyche is a fluid, dynamic system. The moment your beliefs become stone, your intelligence begins to atrophy. When you cling to a belief despite contradictory facts, you are not displaying conviction, you are displaying a fragile ego. In Jungian terms, you have identified yourself entirely with your ideas. This means that for you to admit you were wrong, it feels like a psychic death. The ego panics. It puts up walls. It filters out reality to protect the illusion of being right. But true intelligence requires the death of old ideas so that new ones can be born. This is the archetype of the phoenix, the cycle of death and rebirth that must happen within the mind. If you are the same person you were 5 years ago, holding the exact same rigid opinions, you haven't been steadfast. You have been asleep. You are trapping yourself in a small, suffocating room of your own making, while the universe of knowledge expands outside your door. Closely linked to this rigidity is the fifth habit, the total dependence on external validation for decision-making. Jung famously said, "He who looks outside dreams. He who looks inside awakes." Yet, observe the modern habit of outsourcing thought. Before making a decision, before forming an opinion on a news event, before even knowing how to feel about a movie, people rush to the comments section, the group chat, or the influencer to be told what their stance should be. This is a symptom of a weak connection to the self. When you cannot trust your own judgment, you become a hollow shell, waiting to be filled by the opinions of others. You are living through the persona, the mask you wear for society, rather than from your true center. A person of high intelligence gathers data. Yes, but the final synthesis, the judgment, happens internally in solitude. If you find yourself panicked at the thought of making a choice without consulting the tribe, you are suppressing your own cognitive sovereignty. You are letting the collective mind drive the car of your life while you sleep in the passenger seat. And this journey toward waking up, toward reclaiming that sovereignty, is exactly what we explore here. If you want to continue uncovering the psychology behind your own potential and break free from these unconscious patterns, make sure you are subscribed. It is a simple step to ensure you don't miss the insights that could change your trajectory. Now, we must confront the sixth habit, which is the most paradoxical of all, the illusion of absolute certainty. It is often the least intelligent people who are the most confident. Jung called this inflation, a state where the ego puffs itself up to compensate for a lack of true substance. You see this in people who dominate conversations, who speak with loud, unshakable authority on subjects they barely understand, and who confuse their limited personal experience with universal truth. This is the Dunning-Kruger effect in action, but deeper than that, it is a spiritual stunt. The intelligent mind is characterized by intellectual humility. It knows the shadow. It knows that the unknown is always vaster than the known. To say, "I don't know," is an act of intelligence. It opens the door to the archetype of the student, the seeker. When you are absolutely certain, you are closed. Your cup is full, often with nonsense, and nothing new can be poured in. If you find that you never ask questions, only give answers, you are not displaying dominance. You are displaying a terrified refusal to engage with the complexity of the world. You are building a fortress of arrogance to hide a kernel of ignorance. This fortress often protects the seventh habit, which is the addiction to instant gratification. In a world designed to give us dopamine hits on demand, the ability to wait, to delay pleasure for a greater future reward, is becoming a rare superpower. Jung viewed the inability to control impulses as a form of possession. You are not the master of your house. Your base desires are. When you reach for the phone the moment you feel bored, or abandon a difficult project the moment it stops being fun, you are operating on the level of a child, or purely biological instinct. This inability to delay gratification is what Jung might associate with the archetype of the puer aeternus, the eternal child who refuses to grow up. The child wants the candy now. The adult understands that the candy spoils the dinner. When you live your life enslaved by the immediate impulse, you are trapped in a state of psychological infancy. You are sacrificing your future self for the comfort of your present self. True intelligence is the ability to negotiate with time, to endure the discomfort of discipline today so that you may possess the power of competence tomorrow. If you cannot command your own attention, you are not free, and a mind that is not free cannot be intelligent. Finally, we arrive at the eighth and perhaps most revealing habit, communication dominated by personal attacks rather than logical arguments. When you are faced with a disagreement, watch closely what your mind does. Does it reach for a counter-argument based on facts and logic? Or does it reach for an insult? Psychologically, the resort to ad hominem attacks attacking the person rather than the idea is a desperate defense mechanism of a mind that has run out of ammunition. It is the ego screaming in panic. Jung taught that we project our own insecurities onto others. When you call someone names because you cannot defeat their logic, you are not revealing their stupidity, you are broadcasting your own cognitive limitations. The intelligent mind is capable of separating the idea from the identity. It can entertain a thought without accepting it. It attacks the structure of the argument, not the character of the speaker. If your default mode of debate is mockery, sarcasm, or insult, you have abandoned the realm of logos reason and descended into the chaotic realm of raw, unprocessed emotion. These habits, passive consumption, emotional reactivity, avoidance of effort, rigidity, dependence, arrogance, impulsivity, and hostility are not merely bad traits. They are the bars of a cage. They are the mechanisms by which you unconsciously suppress your own potential. But here is the truth that Jung spent his life trying to show us: the psyche is not fixed, it is fluid, it is capable of alchemy. Recognizing these habits in yourself is not a reason for shame. It is the first step of the individuation process. It is the painful, necessary act of looking into the mirror and seeing the shadow. Most people will never do this. They will continue to sleepwalk through life, blaming the world for their stagnation. But you have a choice. Intelligence is not just about neural processing speed, it is about the courage to be conscious. It is about the daily decision to pause before reacting, to question your own certainties, to embrace the difficulty of learning, and to take responsibility for your own mind. The path from the unconscious mass to the conscious individual is the hardest path you will ever walk, but it is the only one worth taking. So, I invite you to start that work right now. Look at the list we have discussed and ask yourself honestly which of these shadows is currently holding you back. Share your thoughts in the comments below, not to debate, but to declare your intent to change. Let the discussion begin there.